The invitation in the year 2461. Humans had finally become part of the galactic community. After centuries of silence from the stars, Earth had joined the interstellar network just 50 years ago. Now humans were seen as young, weak, and soft by the older alien races. They were allowed to trade and visit other planets, but they were never taken seriously. Until the message came. It arrived at the Earth Science Council's orbital station above Mars. The signal was strange, written in old alien script that even the AI had trouble decoding. When it was finally translated, the scientists stared at it in silence. It was an invitation. Not just any invitation, but one that had never been sent to Earth before. The Deathworld Summit. A secret meeting only held once every 1,000 years. Only the most dangerous species were called Deathworlders, the ones whose home planets were full of poison, fire, monsters, or deadly air. Worlds where everything wanted to kill you. Worlds that created warriors, killers, and survivors. No one had ever considered Earth dangerous enough to join this group. Until now. Dr. Meera Patel, one of Earth's leading xenobiologists, was chosen to lead the human delegation. She had studied alien ecosystems for over 20 years and had visited 5 different planets, but even she had never heard much about this summit. The council told her it was a chance to represent Earth, but her gut told her something was wrong. They were not invited to talk. They were being tested. The ship they were given was fast and silent. Only 5 people were allowed on the mission. Meera, a military commander named Lewis Grant, a medic named Rena, a language specialist, and an AI technician. No weapons. No backup, just observers. That was the rule of the summit. Each species had to come alone, without armies or warships. They had to prove their worth with their minds, instincts, and courage. After a journey through deep space, the ship arrived at the summit world. It had no name, just a number, D17. From orbit, it looked burned and broken. Red skies, black mountains, rivers of boiling liquid. It was not a place meant for peace. As they landed, the humans saw massive structures made from bones and metal. Strange creatures moved through the air and across the ground. The air was thick with heat and the smell of acid. But Meera stepped out without fear. Her boots hit the ground with purpose. Her team followed. At the summit center, hundreds of beings had already gathered. Each came from a death world, planets known for their horror and violence. Some had bodies made of stone. Others had eyes that glowed. Some were 10 feet tall, others moved like shadows. The humans looked small among them. A few aliens stared, a few laughed. One whispered in a language the translator could not fully capture. Something about Earth, something about a mistake. Meera stood tall and nodded. The other humans stayed close. They walked to the welcome area where a council of elders, creatures with massive heads and glowing symbols on their skin, waited. One of them stepped forward and looked at Meera with cold yellow eyes. His voice was deep, echoing in the air and in their minds. Welcome, beings from Earth. We did not expect your kind to accept the call. You come from a world long ignored. But your recent actions in the stars have caught our attention. We invite you to stand among the Deathworlders. If you survive. Meera kept her face calm, but inside she felt a chill. This was not a meeting. It was a challenge. Around her, other species growled, hissed, or laughed. One massive alien stepped forward, skin covered in thick armor plates. He looked down at Meera with eyes like burning coal. You are from Earth, he said softly, that soft planet where rain falls like music and animals sleep in houses. You are no Deathworlder. What are you doing here, little human? Meera looked up at him and replied with a voice steady as stone. We came because we were invited. We came to learn, but we will not be pushed. The alien laughed, but there was something else in his eyes now. Not mockery, but curiosity. He stepped back slowly, and others watched the humans with more interest, some even with caution later. That night, as the humans set up their living space, Inside a strange glowing cave, Rena asked Mira if she thought this was truly a summit or something more. Mira did not answer right away. She looked outside at the sky where two broken moons hung, low and red. "This is not just a meeting," she said slowly. "This is a test, and I think they want us to fail before." Rena could speak. A shadow moved at the entrance. An alien stood there, tall and thin, with skin like cracked glass and eyes like empty wells. He spoke in a whisper, but every word was clear. "You should not have come, human. This world does not forgive mistakes. This place kills gods." Then he turned and vanished into the dark, and the humans finally understood. They were not guests, they were prey. Let me know if you'd like me to write part 2, or want a voiceover-style version, Hindi-English mixed, for narration. The Deathworlders. Next morning the summit truly began. The humans stepped out of their cave shelter into a world that felt like a nightmare made real. The sky was a dull green color filled with the constant sound of distant screams from flying creatures. The ground cracked beneath their boots, and every breath tasted like rusted metal and heat. But the humans moved forward, calmly keeping their eyes open and their minds alert. Inside the central arena, the council had gathered again, along with representatives from more than 50 different species. Each of them came from a planet more deadly than the last, and each one believed themselves to be stronger, smarter, and more worthy than the rest. The air was thick with pride and quiet threats. Every alien had a story and a scar, and each one had survived something that should have killed Thema. Giant beast stood near the center, its skin a thick hide covered in glowing lines that pulsed with heat. It came from a planet where lava flowed like rivers, and every day was hotter than a volcano. Yet the creature smiled, showing rows of sharp black teeth, and it spoke with a deep voice that made the air shake. "We have crushed fire and tamed thunder. Who are these humans to stand among us?" Nearby, a being made entirely of moving crystals spoke with a cold, sharp tone. "Our world cuts flesh with wind, and our seas are acid. These humans look like children without armor or claws. How long will they last?" A few others laughed, but not a Lin. One dark corner, an old warrior sat silently. His skin was pale like dead stone, and he had no eyes, just 2 black holes in his face. Yet he listened carefully to every word, and his head turned when the humans entered. His voice was like dry leaves. When he finally spoke, "Weakness is not always soft, and strength is not always loud. Watch them closely. They are not what they seem." Mira noticed him and gave a respectful nod. She could feel the tension in the air, like a wire pulled too tight. It was clear that many did not want the humans there, and some might even try to remove them. She whispered to Commander Lewis, "Stay sharp. We are being watched from all sides." The council spoke again, declaring the summit officially open. But instead of talks or shared ideas, the first event was announced: a test of survival. A creature from one of the most dangerous planets would be released into the arena, and each species had to react without weapons or help. The goal was simple: stay alive. Mira's heart sank slightly. This was not a summit of peace or diplomacy. It was a game, a brutal one, and humans were the newest players. As the gates opened and the arena lights dimmed, a massive creature stepped into view. It had 12 legs covered in razor-sharp spines and eyes that glowed with hunger. Its mouth dripped with acid, and its body pulsed with energy that made the walls shake. The beast screamed a sound that made some weaker aliens fall to their knees, and then it attacked. Panic spread through the arena. Some species used brute strength to fight. Some ran. Others hid. The humans did neither. Mira gave quick orders. Lewis moved to draw the creature's attention, while Rena and the technician set up a trap using parts from their scanning gear. The language expert used sound frequencies to confuse the creature's hearing. They worked together like a perfect machine. The beast charged toward Lewis, who stood still until the last moment, then dived aside as Rena triggered the trap. A burst of electrical current hit the creature from the device they had just built. It roared in pain, confused for a moment. Then Mira threw a chemical flare into its face, made from minerals found near their cave. The creature screamed again and turned away, running into the wall, where it finally collapsed unconscious. The arena fell silent. The humans stood together, breathing hard but alive. They had not used power or muscle, but something even more dangerous: intelligence, coordination, timing. Council watched quietly. The laughing aliens were no longer laughing. Some looked at the humans with fear, others with respect. The old warrior in the corner nodded once slowly and said to no one in particular, "This is why they were banned once before. They fight like prey but win like predators." After the event, the council called Mira forward. She stood before them, calm and steady. "You do not have claws or poison or fire," said one of the elders, "yet you defeated the beast faster than any other. How?" Mira replied simply, "Because we do not fight alone, we fight as one." The answer made a few members of the council lean back in silence. Others whispered in old languages. Mira turned and walked away. Her team followed, and behind them, the arena seemed to shift just a little. The Deathworld summit had started as a joke, to some a test for others. But now the humans were no longer the joke, and they were no longer just guests. They were something new, something unpredictable. And in the shadows, the oldest species began to worry. Let me know when you are ready for Part 3, the first test, or if you want any parts turned into voiceover scripts or visual scenes for your YouTube video. The first test. The sun never rose on this world, but light came from strange cracks in the sky, as if the planet itself was bleeding energy. The Deathworld summit moved into its next phase without warning, without time to rest. The council summoned all species to the open grounds where giant bones stood like towers, and the ground smelled of ash and metal. A voice filled the air, not from a mouth, but from the minds of every creature present. "The trial of proof has begun. Stand your ground, or be removed from the summit forever, one by one." Each team looked around, uncertain, confused, until the answer appeared, not from the council, but from beneath their feet. Ground cracked and shook as if the planet itself was waking up. Mira shouted for her team to move, just as a massive creature burst out of the earth. A thing not made of bone or flesh, but something worse. It was like a living shadow covered in sharp spines and dripping liquid that hissed when it touched the ground. It had no eyes, but it moved with purpose toward the closest group. Of alien screams filled the air as the creature struck fast, tearing through the first group in seconds. It did not kill out of hunger or anger. It moved like a machine, without emotion, just following instinct to destroy. Mira saw two more beasts rise from the distance. The test was not about watching a single threat. It was a full hunt. The arena had become a killing ground. Commander Lewis pointed to a nearby rock formation that looked stable and shouted for the team to move. Mira did not argue. Her mind raced for ideas. This was not just about running. It was about surviving and showing the council that humans could adapt, think, and act better than the others. While others scattered in fear, the humans worked. They reached the rock and immediately began turning their equipment into tools and traps. Rena broke down the scanning drone to make an energy barrier, while the technician rewired a thermal rod to create a heat lure. Mira took out a small case filled with samples of alien minerals and chemicals. They had collected them earlier just for study. Now they would use them as weapons. The Pazthame creature turned toward the humans, attracted by the movement and the sound. But before it could charge, the technician activated the lure, throwing it behind a fallen structure. The beast followed the heat signature, giving the team a few seconds to finish the setup. Rena activated the barrier just as the creature returned, slamming into it with full force. The energy sparked, and the beast screamed, not in pain but confusion. Mira then stepped forward with a small chemical vial. She threw it at the creature's legs, and as it broke open, the liquid reacted with the alien soil, causing a rapid chain explosion. The blast sent the creature tumbling back, limbs twitching as smoke rose from its body. Around them, other species had tried to fight alone and failed. A team of armored reptiles lay broken nearby. Another group had vanished into the tunnels and never returned. The council watched everything from above their minds, recording every move, every success, and every death. When the dust settled, only a few species remained standing. The humans were among them, not the strongest, not the fastest, but the most prepared and the Most united, the council called for silence, and once more their voice entered the minds of all. The test is complete. The weak have fallen. The clever remain. Earth, you have survived. But survival is only the beginning, as the humans return to their cave. Mira sat down, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the rush of survival. She looked at her team, bruised, tired, and silent, but alive. She spoke softly, but her words were sharp and clear. This was not the last test. They want to see what we do next. From the shadows of the cave, the same pale warrior who had spoken before appeared again. His presence brought silence like cold air entering a warm room. He did not smile, and he did not move closer. He only spoke one sentence that sent a deeper chill through Myra's spine. The beasts are not the test, you are. And then he turned and vanished once more, leaving behind a truth more terrifying than any monster. Council was not looking for warriors. They were looking for threats, and Earth had just passed the first gate. Let me know when to begin. Part 4. The plot unfolds, or if you'd like a cinematic voiceover script style for any part, the plot unfolds. Skies above the summit world never changed, yet something in the air felt heavier than before. After the first test, whispers began to move like wind between the alien species. Some were filled with quiet respect, others with fear, but most carried something darker: confusion, doubt, suspicion. The humans had survived the trial, not with force, but with mind and unity, something the older species had not expected. And now old questions began to rise from deep memory inside the human cave. Mira sat near the scanner reading atmospheric data, but her thoughts were elsewhere ever since the pale warrior had said those words, the beasts are not the test. She had felt something watching them, not just from the shadows but from above, as if eyes that were not made of flesh or metal were studying every human breath. She had been part of missions before, but nothing like this. She turned to Lewis and asked if he had noticed the pattern. These events, she said, they are not random. They are designed to break us, not just kill us, but to observe how we react, what we fear, what we value, and how we think. Lewis nodded slowly and said, I thought the same. These tests feel like something much older than war. They are not trying to see if we survive, they are trying to see who we really are. Later that day, the council called Mira alone to the chamber of records, a place hidden beneath the ground, made from ancient crystal and strange light. The walls were filled with carvings that moved when you looked at them, shifting scenes from history, but none of them showed humans until now. In the center of the chamber was a single new image, a figure standing upright among monsters, its skin soft, its body small, but its eyes burning brighter than fire. It was a human, and it was marked not with respect, but with warning. One of them elders spoke, this image is from before your kind knew the stars long ago. Humans made contact with forces they could not control. Your early experiments with gravity and space tore holes into layers we had sealed. Your kind touched madness and survived it. You were meant to be erased from the network, but your planet was protected by chance, by distance, by ignorance. And now you are here again. Myra listened quietly, but her mind was racing. Earth had never known of this. The archives on Mars said nothing about such events. If the council was telling the truth, then something had been hidden from human history, something dangerous, and maybe it was the reason they had been invited. Only now, back at their shelter, the rest of the team was facing trouble. One of the food supplies had been tampered with. Rena found traces of a foreign compound in the rations, not deadly but strong enough to cause weakness and confusion. Someone had tried to poison them, and they had failed barely. The technician checked the surveillance logs and found nothing. No alien had been seen entering the area, but something was missing, a 5-minute gap where the sensors went blind. Mira returned to the shelter and was briefed. She looked at the small piece of evidence left behind, a fragment of cloth with a symbol burned into it. Not a tribe, not a team, but a secret faction. Mira understood. Now the summit was not a meeting. It was a war, not of armies, but of ideas. The council had invited Earth not to join but to watch them fail, to watch them collapse under pressure. And when they did, Earth would be labeled unfit and left vulnerable. The invitation was never about peace, it was bait. She called a meeting with her team, and spoke clearly. We have proof they are trying to break us, not just physically, but mentally. They want us to turn on each other. They want us to lose faith in ourselves, and when that happens, they will erase us from the stars. Rena asked, then what do we do now? And Mira replied, we survive every test, but more than that, we learn who the real enemy is, and we show them that we see through their mask. As night fell, a storm of black ash covered the summit. World-strange lights moved in the clouds, and the sound of distant machines echoed through the canyons. And deep below the summit, a room lit by fire showed the council not as leaders, but as watchers, their eyes fixed on Earth and their voices speaking in ancient tones. They learn too fast, their minds move in ways we cannot predict. They are not like the others, and if they survive the next phase, we may not be able to control them. Let me know when you are ready for part 5, Fire from the Sky. Or if you'd like to start turning these parts into YouTube-ready scripts with narration cues, or scene ideas. Fire from the Sky. The sky cracked open, without warning, as if the summit world itself had grown tired of secrets and silence. A blinding light fell from above, not like sunlight or energy beams, but something ancient, something raw and alive. It struck the far side of the valley, where one of the alien camps had been resting, and within seconds, the ground there vanished, swallowed by heat and noise and white flame. The summit shook under the impact, and everyone looked to the sky and asked the same question silently: who attacked and why? Mira and her team rushed out of their shelter, their eyes blinking against the red smoke that now covered the horizon where the strike had landed. There was nothing left, just burning stone and echoing silence. No screams, no survivors, only ash. The council made no announcement, no warning, no reason. They simply watched from their tower high above the others, as if this was part of the summit, part of the plan. Lewis looked through the sensor readouts and said the energy signature does not match any known species. It is not plasma, it is not nuclear, it is older than that. It feels like weaponized gravity, like a star fragment. Mira felt her heart tighten, not just from fear, but from a cold realization. They were not just being tested anymore. They were being hunted. By nightfall, another blast came, this one near the crystal caves where the insectoid species had been camping again. No warning again, total destruction. The survivors fled in panic. Some species started accusing each other. Some blamed the humans, saying Earth had brought a curse to the summit, saying this had never happened before. Mira stood before the crowd and tried to calm them, but they only heard the fear in their own minds. Back at their camp, Mira stared at the summit map, trying to find a pattern. The strikes were not random. They were targeting those who had helped or supported the humans. The insectoids had shared food with the humans. The stone-skinned creatures had spoken up for them during the trial. Now, both were gone. Mira traced her finger across the map slowly and whispered, they are erasing witnesses. Technician ran in breathless, carrying data from an intercepted signal. The code was old, hidden between energy frequencies used only by council leaders. What he found changed everything. It was not a distress signal. It was an execution order, and the targets were not the weakest species. They were the most independent, the ones who refused to follow orders, the ones who thought for themselves. Earth was at the top of that list. That night, Mira called a secret meeting with a few remaining allies, a quiet species from a gas world that floated like silk and spoke in musical tones, and a small band of biomechanical creatures who had long been ignored by the council. Mira showed them the signal and the pattern, and told them everything she knew about the false summit, the poison, the test, the plan to isolate Earth and remove them quietly. One of the biomechs said, this is not about your species alone. This has happened before. Others who asked questions vanished. Some planets were erased and blamed on accidents. We thought we were safe if we stayed silent, but we were wrong. Mira stood and looked at each of them, her voice steady and cold. Then it is time to stop being quiet. It is time to act, not with rage, but with strategy. She told her team to prepare defensive systems, while the allies spread word to those still willing to listen. Within hours, whispers of rebellion moved through the summit halls, not loud, not open, just quiet nods and shared glances. But something had changed. The fire from the sky had not killed their spirit, it had awakened it. The council watched all of it unfold, their minds speaking to one another through a silent channel. They are gathering, they are seeing what we did not want them to see, they are connecting, and Earth is the spark. We should have burned their planet before they ever reached the stars. But it was too late, because the humans were no longer just visitors or test subjects. They were the match in a forest of dry trees, and now the fire would spread far away across the stars. A hidden probe near Earth activated for the first time in centuries. Its signal reached deep into the ocean below, where something old and sleeping began to wake, and as the humans on the summit prepared for the coming war, a voice whispered across frequencies. Long thought lost you, tried to test us, now you will face us. Let me know when you're ready for part 6. The human strategy, or if you'd like to adapt any part of this into cinematic voiceover or animated scene outlines for your channel. Human strategy. The summit world was no longer a place of silence and ceremony. It had become a furnace of suspicion and fear. Entire camps had been reduced to craters. Alliances were shifting, and old enemies now stood together in quiet confusion. But the humans moved through this chaos not with panic, but with purpose, because Mira understood something that the others still did not. This was no longer a game of tests, it was war without armies, a war of ideas, of pressure, of survival. And the humans had been playing that kind of war for thousands of years. Inside the shelter, Mira spread out a holographic map across the floor, showing the pattern of the council's attacks, the behavior of the remaining species, and the location of energy spikes detected beneath the surface. She pointed to one spot beneath the central spire of the council tower and said, "This is where they control the network. This is where the signals begin, and where they can end us in seconds. If we do nothing, we are not going to fight them head on. We are going to rewrite the story." Commander Lewis looked at her and asked, "How do you plan to do that? We have no ships, no weapons, and no allies with real firepower." Mira smiled, the kind of smile that only comes when a person has stopped fearing the rules, and said, "We do not need firepower. We need their minds to break. We need them to turn on each other." That night the team set the plan into motion, not with guns or explosions, but with information. They slipped false data into the summit network, using fragments of alien code found in old archives. The messages were short, but powerful, designed to sound real enough to cause doubt. Species X has formed a secret pact with humans. Species Y plans to flee with Earth's help. Species Z has betrayed the Council. Already the seeds of mistrust were planted, and it did not take long to grow. By the next day, fights had started small at first, a disagreement between two leaders, a challenge over territory, a warning shot over water, but then it grew faster, like fire across dry leaves. Some species pulled away from the Council, refusing orders, demanding answers, asking questions that had no safe answers, and behind every spark was a human whisper. While the aliens turned on each other, Mira and her team moved through the underground tunnels with a group of biomechs guiding them. These tunnels were older than the summit, older than the Council. They were carved by something ancient and filled with machines that no one understood, but Mira's technician found a way to connect to them. He opened a panel and found a live feed of the Council's private meeting chamber. Their voices were calm, but their words were full of fear. One said, "We cannot let this continue. The humans have infected the structure, not with weapons, but with thought." Another said, "Their minds bend around problems we cannot predict. They see weakness and turn it into strength." And the oldest voice said, "We thought they were small. We were wrong. They are something else, something born from chaos, something that should not exist in this order." Mira recorded everything and sent it into the summit's public feed for all species to hear the truth from the mouths of their leaders. And when the message played in the air above the valley, everything changed. The lie was broken. The Council had no more masks, and the Deathworlders saw what the humans had seen from the beginning. This summit was a trap, not for the weak, but for the strong, for those who refused control. But the Council did not surrender. Instead, they activated the defense systems hidden beneath the planet. A last strike against rebellion towers unfolded from the ground. firing beams of sound that shattered stone and melted steel. Mira ordered her team to move fast, not away from danger, but toward the control spire. If they could not stop the weapons, the summit would become a grave for everyone inside. The tower. Mira and Lewis fought their way past drones and traps, using alien tech and human tactics at every turn. Mira used knowledge not just of machines but of biology and fear, turning the environment into an advantage. The technician finally reached the core and faced a system locked behind code older than human civilization, but he smiled and said, "Code is still code, and chaos always finds the gap in minutes." The system was down. The towers went silent, and for the first time the summit truly listened as Mira stepped onto the council platform with the sky burning red behind her and said, "You brought us here to fail. You watched us like prey, but now you see the truth. Humans do not break under pressure. We adapt, we learn, and we strike when you least expect." Remaining species stood still, some stunned, some nodding slowly, and in the silence that followed a single voice came from the old pale warrior, the one who had always watched from the edge. He said quietly, "You came here as guests, you became survivors. Now you are something more. You are not just from a death world, are the death the council feared. Let me know when you want part 7, the new rule, or if you'd like voiceover style narration adaptation for this part, the new rule." Summit World was quiet for the first time in many days, but it was not peace that filled the silence, it was realization. The towers of the council stood dark, the weapons silenced, the skies calm, yet the air still felt heavy, not with fear, but with change, a kind of tension that only comes before the breaking of something. Ancient Mira stood at the highest platform where council voices once ruled, looking over the gathering of species below. Some were wounded, some confused, others watched her with respect, but most with something deeper, something that had never been given to humans before: recognition. Beside her, Lewis and Rena stood silent, waiting for the next move. The technician stood by the control node, holding the final encryption key that could either destroy the summit's memory core or transfer control. Mira looked at the faces below, not just alien but alive beings, who had seen the truth not through speeches but through survival. She took a breath and spoke without fear, without hesitation. "Your summit is broken, your rules were made to control, and your tests were designed to kill the weak, but you forgot something when you invited us. You forgot what Earth truly is. We are not made of steel or acid or stone. We are not shaped by fire or poison. We are shaped by struggle, by failure, by learning. We are not the strongest, we are not the oldest, but we are the most dangerous because we grow through every pain, every loss, every shadow you cast. You thought you were testing us, but we were watching too. We learned your systems, your lies, your fears. And now we offer you a choice." She stepped aside and pointed to the node. "We can erase this summit, erase every trace of your control, and walk away. Or we can rebuild it under a new rule, not of power, but of balance. No more secret hunts, no more traps, no more death games, a place where every world has a voice, even the ones you once feared." For a long moment no one moved, no one spoke, and then slowly the old pale warrior stepped forward and raised one hand, not in threat, but in support, then another. Species followed, then more, until dozens of voices rose together, not in words, but in sound, a sound that was not alien or human, but agreement. Mira turned to her team and nodded. The technician uploaded the override. The summit was no longer under council command. The node's light changed from blue to white, a signal of rebirth. And then the stars shifted above them, satellites reoriented. Communication beacons opened wide, and for the first time in 1,000 years, a new broadcast was sent across the galaxy, not from the council, not from a throne, but from Earth. A voice carried across systems, across species, across time. "This is Earth. We are not your enemies. We are your reflection, your future, your equal." Weeks passed, then months. The summit was repaired, not as a monument to power, but as a meeting of minds, where species came not to prove they were the deadliest, but to learn how to survive together. The council was not destroyed, but broken into pieces, fragments of a time that had ended. Mira returned to Earth, a quiet hero, never seeking power, only answers. She was welcomed not with parades, but with quiet awe. People who had once feared the stars now looked at them with hope because someone had gone there and returned not just alive, but victorious. The Deathworlders now spoke of humans with respect, not because of strength or size or weapons, but because of something far more dangerous than all of those things. Combined their will to adapt, to rise, to surprise, to become more than what the galaxy had expected. And deep beneath the waves of Earth, where ancient sensors still listened, the signal pulsed quietly, once every cycle, not in warning, not in fear, but as a reminder. You invited us, we survived your world, now welcome to ours.